เลือกได้
แล้วตอนเย็นหลัง4 โมงเป็นหมอลำเลยเชิญ
5 โมงก็มีเสียงเพลง
Good morning, Ajahn.
ประกาศรางวัลในของที่หนึ่ง
Today I come back to the temple, so they have quite many activities. So if you are ready, you can start your class, Pandit.
Okay. Do I need to wait for the other people?
We have the record, Pandit, Ajahn.
What do you mean? We have a record. I will send a link to you.
Okay, no problem. I want to share the screen. While people still arriving into the room, today we'll talk about mindfulness and whether mindfulness is the same or different from vipassana. We want to separate how mindfulness practice is different to samadhi practice or concentration practice. But just while we're waiting for other people, seeing who will arrive. Okay, I need to click OK. I'm going to put into the chat the sutta that we're going to look at for a few minutes this morning. So in this sutta, a very famous sutta about samadhi, concentration, and it's very short, so we should be able to understand it fairly straightforward and easy. I like to go back to the suttas because this is the actual teaching of the Buddha and is not what people say the Buddha taught. So sometimes I've seen and heard various Dhamma talks, especially by Westerners, and they are giving talks about things that are really not Buddhism or not what was originally taught. So when we go back to the suttas, we're coming back to the original teachings of Sakyamuni Buddha. And from there, we can make a discussion. What does it mean? How do we practice with it? But it does mean that we're always coming back to the original teachings, which I think is important. The suttas have a vast number of different topics and different approaches. So we should never take any one particular sutta to be, this is the truth and this is Buddhism. We should always take it, this is just what this one sutta says. So for every topic you find in one sutta, you find another sutta that says something different or sometimes says something opposite. So we never take one text to be definitive. We always try to look at numerous texts. But by going back to these texts, we are coming back to what was actually originally taught. Sorry, I'm just drinking my coffee at the same time as talking to you. So in this sutta, as with, I will assume some of you do not know really about sutta and sutta language. The suttas were recorded by recitation. That means that the monks and the nuns would come together and they would recite together the teaching or the summary of the teachings that they had heard. The idea of recitation is this is a better form of record keeping than any other method. There are three main methods. Three main methods of recording something in no particular order, but one is by writing down, another is by storytelling, and the third one is recitation. So when you write something down, the problem is what you have written can only be accessed by people who can read. And certainly at the time of the Buddha, not so many people could read. Another thing, when you write something down, the paper or the leaves that you write on are subject to fire, flood, mold, getting lost, getting damaged in some way by insects or weather. So it's not really a very long-term way of keeping a record, unless you write on stone. If you write on stone, this is a very good record-keeping method, but you can't write very much on stone. Some of you may know or have seen Asoka's pillars. This is where King Asoka wrote down some Buddhist principles on these large pillars across India. So that's a way to write things down, but you can't write very much. Recitation is considered the better or best form of record keeping, because if you make a mistake when you are doing the recitation, you hear yourself making the mistake. You're out of sync with the other people that you are chanting with. You hear your mistake and you correct it. So any mistakes that you or other people make automatically get corrected when thousands of people can recite the same teaching. For example, today, Dhammacakka Sutta, the first teaching of the Buddha. This sutta is can be recited by heart by most Buddhist monks and nuns. I can recite this sutta with monks from Sri Lanka or America, anywhere that they are using the original text. And even in Mahayana, the versions of the sutta that they recite are almost word for word the same. So recitation is in fact a really, really accurate form of record keeping. Also, the teaching then remains in the heads of the people where it should be. The teaching should not be on a stone pillar. It should not be in scriptures in a room somewhere. The teachings should be in the minds of people who can use it. So recitation is good for that method. The only reason the teachings were written down in the current format is that and stop the share for a minute, is that there weren't enough monks to carry on with the recitation. In Sri Lanka at that time, Sri Lanka was moving more towards the Mahayana school, and the Theravada school was dwindling, and there weren't enough monks on the island of Sri Lanka to keep up the recitation. So a Indian monk called Buddha Gosa, he undertook to write all of the teachings down, and that is the Tripitaka and the commentaries that we have today. So the monks and nuns would learn the recitation, and they would each learn a section called a vagga, or section of 10 or 12 suttas. And then in their group, they would all learn this set of suttas by heart. Then every Uposatha day, every 14 days or every full moon, they would go to the other groups of monks and nuns, and they would recite their section to that other group, and the other group would recite their section to this group. Once you had learned a vagga, a section, you could move to a different group and learn a different vagga. And some people could learn were able to learn vast quantities of scriptures. Even today, some monks in Burma are reputed to be able to recite the entire Tripitaka just from memory, which is amazing. So because of this, because each of the disciples would learn one vagga, one set of 10 or 12 suttas, or one section, and then could pass on to learn more and more sections if they wished. What it meant, each section of the suttas would usually contain the entire teaching, a bit about mindfulness, a bit about concentration, a bit about the history or 6 senses or 5 khandhas or 4 noble truths. And so this means that the suttas are extremely repetitive. There are stock phrases in the suttas. So when we come to, for example, the 6 senses as a method of meditation, in sutta after sutta, we find the exact same stock phrases. This means that when you learned your set of chants and you learn these certain stock phrases, then other people, when they come with their chants, they have their stock phrases that are exactly the same as yours. So these phrases were repeated throughout the suttas to aid recitation and aid the sharing of Dhamma. So even if you're with monks and nuns who have learned different set of suttas to yourself, you can still you still have common ground that you are learning and reciting the same words. So when we read suttas, the language is rather difficult to access. These are not designed to be writings. These are designed to be recitations. And they are designed to have stock phrases that are repeated, some often repeated within the sutta, but repeated between different suttas as well. So that's why the language is rather strange with suttas. They are designed to be recited. Since yesterday we were talking about concentration, which we will finish today, we will move on to mindfulness. I will show you one of the suttas, which is a good example of how the Buddha talked about concentration. And hopefully from our discussion yesterday, you've got some insight or ideas into concentration. Most importantly, you've figured out that even though you know the teachings, many monks and nuns know the teachings really well, it is still difficult to explain, difficult to put into words. Your usefulness as a teacher depends on your ability to say things nicely, clearly, formulate your ideas sensibly, use nice, simple language. So that's what we have been doing yesterday, and we will do today. So in this sutta, Sangharavat Sutta, if there is a dash over the letter, that makes it a long vowel as opposed to a short vowel. So it's Sangharavat Sutta. Sangharavat Sutta. The dash makes it a long A or a long I. The vowel O in Pali is always long. So all suttas have like a little preamble, and this one says at Savatthi, which means that Savatthi is the place where this particular teaching was recorded and systematized and put into a recitation. So all the suttas have this preamble of a little bit about what happened. Here is a Brahmin called Sangharavat who went up to the Buddha and asked the question. So I'll leave you to read, if you wish to read the preamble by yourself. I want to come down to the. Okay, we can talk about it. So he says, why is it some teachings are easy to spring to mind and other teachings are not easy to spring to mind? The Buddha, the translator here uses the word hymn, but it means a teaching. So the Buddha answers, there is a time when your heart is overcome in sensual desire and you don't understand sense desire. If you are caught in sense desire, you do not know what is good for yourself, good for another, or good for both. This is a stock phrase. So Dhamma is supposed to be have benefit for you, benefit for others, and benefit for both you and others. This is a standard way of talking about Dhamma. So the Buddha here, he says, suppose there was a bowl of water that was mixed with dye, such as turmeric dye or any kind of dye. If this dye is dropped into the water will become colored with the dye. So at that time, if the bowl of water is colored by dye, a person looking for their own reflection would not see it, would not know it or see it. In the same way, when the mind is mired in sense desire, then the teachings will not easily spring to mind. So this is the first of the 5 hindrances. I'll put this word. I put this into the chat for you. This is the first of the 5 hindrances, which are called Nivarana. Now, anybody who's done meditation will have heard about these 5 hindrances. So, in the same way, when the mind has become mired with ill will, so this is the first of the hindrances is sense desire. The second of the hindrances is ill will. Payabhata in the Pali. Ill will means that you're getting caught up in anger or disliking. And in the same way, ill will stop you from seeing and knowing the truth. In the same way, if there was a bowl of water heated by fire, boiling and bubbling, a person with clear eyes would not, looking for their own reflection, would not see it or know it. So again, first analogy, a bowl of water with dye or turmeric, you would not be able to see yourself. In the same way, sense desire stops you from knowing what's of benefit to yourself. Second hindrance, ill will. If a bowl of water was heated by fire and bubbling, you would not be able to see your reflection in the water. In the same way, you would not know what is of benefit to yourself. Third hindrance, tina mitta, is this word he translates here as dullness and drowsiness. Tina mitta, or sometimes translated as sloth and torpor. But it means when you just are tired or dull or sleepy and the mind doesn't spring up in your meditation. Here the Buddha compares this to a bowl of water overgrown with moss or aquatic plant weeds, water weeds. In a bowl of water which has weeds in it, you would not be able to see your own reflection. In the same way, the mind that has sloth and torpor is not able to truly see itself or know what is to its benefit. So that's the third hindrance. The fourth hindrance down here is restlessness and remorse. the Pali word, if you're interested here, udacha kukucha. So restlessness and remorse, or sometimes is translated as flurry and worry. But it means when the mind is just overcome with thinking and is jumping around and can't settle down because you have too many things on your mind. So the Buddha compares this to a bowl of water stirred up by the wind. In that bowl of water, if you were to seek your own face, you would not clearly see or know your own face. In the same way, if the mind is stirred up by restlessness, then you will not know what is truly to, you will not be able to see itself clearly and will not know what is to its benefit. And then finally, the fifth of the five hindrances is when the mind becomes mired in doubt. Vichika in the Pali. This particular website, Bhante Sujato, he puts the Pali in together with the English, which is very useful. So vichika means doubt. So the Buddha says, suppose there was a bowl of water, murky and muddy, hidden in the darkness. So if you stir mud up in the bowl of water, you will not be able to see your own reflection. In the same way, if the mind is caught in doubting, then, or not clear about the path or meditation, then it would not be able to see and know itself correctly. So here's the important thing. Those are the five hindrances. And you see the Buddha gives a nice, simple, clear analogy. A bowl of water with dye, a bowl of water that's boiling, a bowl of water that's choking with weeds, a bowl of water that's whipped up by wind. These are all nice, clear, simple metaphors that the Buddha is using. This is good public speaking. Using jargon and catchphrases is never useful, but to make a nice, clear analogy, image that you can imagine in your head is really good teaching. So finally, he says now, there is a time when your heart is not overcome by sense desire, and you have understood the escape from sense desire that has arisen. Then you know what is good for you, know what is good for another, you know what is good for both. Teachings that are long unpracticed will spring to mind. It's important to note here that when we talk about overcoming sense desire, overcoming sensual desire that has arisen, it does not mean that you have overcome sense desire in your life. You will always have sense desire in your life. You want to go to the bathroom, sense desire, right? Your body tells you, I need the bathroom, I want to do it. It's sense desire. You will always have sense desire for food, for your favorite things, to escape the heat or the cold. What it means here is really important, is sensual desire that has arisen, which means when you are sitting there and you're doing your meditation, you're sitting with mindfulness and concentration, then a thought comes into your mind of sense desire. You can feel it in that moment. As that thought dissipates, that sense desire has gone. At that moment, you experience escape from sense desire. You are then dwelling with the mind that is free from desire. You understand the difference. This is not saying your entire life has to be free from all desire. You will not be able to accomplish that. What this means is in this second, in this moment, while you are looking at the mind, sense desire arises. When that sense desire ceases, at that moment, you have found the escape from sense desire. By the way, the escape is this word here, nitsaranat, or saranat is also the same thing, means to escape from, and it can also be called a refuge. So when you take the refuges, Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, is this word saranang, which means to escape from or be free from, or have refuge from. So there is a time, the Buddha says here, when sensual desire is not overcoming your mind and you know freedom from sense desire in that moment. This is very important, this word. Freedom from the sense desire that has arisen. Always in meditation, we're not concerned with our life, we're concerned with what's happening in the mind at this second. So he says, suppose a bowl of water that was not mixed with dye, somebody could see their own reflection. That means if the mind is not caught in sense desire, it will know itself and know what it is to its benefit. So he does the same for the mind that has ill will. In that moment, you know the freedom or refuge from ill will in that moment, or freedom from ill will that has arisen. So that's the same as a bowl of water that is not heated by fire and not boiling. He goes on for each of the 5 hindrances, the dullness and drowsiness, tina mitta. He knows when the mind is not caught in tina mitta. And at that time, the teachings, remember, hymns, a strange translation, but it means teachings. The teachings that will spring to mind very easily. So he goes through all of the 5 hindrances again, flurry and worry, and in doubt. And you'll notice each of these paragraphs is repeating exactly the same as the paragraphs earlier, but just changing from one hindrance to another hindrance. The reason for this is it's designed for recitation. If you recite these, you're reciting the same passage over and over and over again, but you're just changing the one word of the hindrance. So those who are not practiced with suttas, that's why they're written in this strange way. Now, we've had 5 hindrances, sense desire, ill will, restlessness, doubt, and sloth and torpor, all compared to a bowl of water. Then he says, what about if the mind is not affected by sense desire, ill will, restlessness, sloth and torpor, and doubt? So then he comes to describe that state of mind, when the mind is free from hindrances in that moment. Suppose there was a bowl of water, transparent, clear, unclouded, and brought into the light. A person with clear eyes, checking their own reflection, would truly know it and truly see it. In the same way, there is a time when your heart is not overcome and mired in doubt, and you truly understand the doubt or other hindrance that has arisen. So at this time, when all the 5 hindrances have been overcome, this is the time where the 7 factors of awakening, this is called the Bojjhanga, if you want to look up the teaching, Bojjhanga. 7 factors of awakening come into being. That is, the mind will, when you have overcome the hindrances, the mind will lead into mindfulness, Dhamma Vijaya, investigation of Dhamma, energy, virya, or putting in effort, rapture, the pleasant feeling through the body, tranquility, the peacefulness in the mind, immersion, which means concentration, and equanimity. So these, all of these things are the pathway into samadhi, into the concentrated mind that has all of these qualities in it. So these are what happen when the 5 hindrances have been overcome. You will notice here that these 7 awakening factors include mindfulness, include energy or effort, include the rapture, the piti. They include tranquility, include samadhi, and include equanimity. So when the hindrances are overcome, all of these factors come together and arise at that same time, at that moment. So when we're talking about vipassana meditation or any kind of meditation, there is a point at which you are not doing one practice or another, but the mind comes together and all these factors start to come into play and bind together. So this is a typical way in which the Buddha would talk about practice. I put the link to the sutta in the chat so that you can look for yourself. I take it everybody saw that. Maybe if anybody came late, I put the sutta link in again. It's perfectly clear to everyone. If nobody says anything, I'm going to assume that that this is clear for you all.
Yes.
Okay, let me open up my...
Yeah, it's never perfectly clear for us, and until we really practice. So it's as clear as mud.
As clear as mud, but we covered the ground. Confusion made my head spin round. The point is, in this sutta, that often, sorry, I'm just pulling up my Word document here. I'm trying not to use Word anymore. I'm using the free version, LibreOffice, rather than the Microsoft version. The point is that often when people are teaching Dharma, they focus on one thing, like mindfulness or effort or dealing with pain. But when the suttas talk about things, they usually bring all of these things together. So as one starts to attain into it, then all of these factors come together and arise together. So at that point, there's no real distinction between this practice or that practice, or this teacher or that teacher. The mind has simply come together by itself. It depends on the practice that you are doing. We will talk about Mahasi Sayadaw practice, which is what we do in Mahajula. I'll put this name in. Mahasi Sayadaw, just in case anybody doesn't know this word, but this was the teacher in Burma who started the style of practice of noting. And noting is a really good and effective way to practice restraint of the 6 senses. Remember that we talked about yesterday. Because you note something, and when you note it, you are not getting drawn into it. With this noting practice, what will happen then? Every time the mind starts to go to something, you note, bring attention back. And at some point, everything stops. The mind stops going out to anything. When the mind stops going out to any object, it starts to come together and concentrate naturally by itself. But there is no object of concentration. It's not a samadhi practice, concentrating on an object. At this time, you will often, some of the things you can experience, the head will come up like this. You will have an energization through the body. The body will sit up very straight, all by itself, without any effort required. There'll be a feeling of awareness of the body like this. So you have an awareness of consciousness diffused throughout the body. There is a feeling of brightness or luminosity, not lights. If you see lights, that is an object of the eye, whether internal or external, but just a feeling of brightness or luminosity. The body will appear pleasant in sensation. You may have aches and pains. If you put your attention onto the aches and pains, they will still be there. But while you're in the meditation, then the body will start to appear as pleasant. Not exciting, not ecstatic, just this nice feeling of consciousness spread throughout the body. If you then hold the mind in this place, in this limbo, not allowing it to go anywhere, the consciousness will gather. The Buddha used 3 words: gather, unify, and center itself. Will center itself, and then the piti, rapture, comes through the body. Rapture is, again, not massively pleasant, but not, exciting or thrilling, but it feels good. It feels right. It feels nice. So these are entering into these states of mind. If these things start to happen, usually you can abandon the practice that you were doing and move into this experience. So if there's no other question or comment, we can talk about the coming on to mindfulness practice. So let me share the screen if I can find it on my computer. Okay, I found it. And let me share the screen. And I think we can go to this one. Okay. So yesterday we were brainstorming. What I do is I want to draw from you all of the different ideas that we have about each of these topics. And then you need to consolidate to think what you think is the most important aspect. So we looked at what is vipassana. I'm just mentioning this because yesterday maybe some people weren't here. So we had a whole bunch of things that we were considering to be important. One is that it's a practice, not a philosophy. We need to mention why we do vipassana, where it leads to. We need to do the mechanism, so seeing clearly. These are all things we brought in. Very importantly, purification of mind. Then, so if you weren't here yesterday, then you have to access the recording or see what we wrote down here. Then we went into what is samadhi, what is concentration, some of the things that you said were important. In samadhi, concentrating on an object, the mind has to stop still, and the mind stops still on a single object. This is why a kid playing a computer game is not practicing samadhi, because the computer game is moving. Or if you're driving a car or painting a picture, it's not, you are concentrating in the sense of the English word, but you are not practicing samadhi meditation, because the thing that you are concentrating on is constantly moving. For samadhi meditation, the object must be stationary. So there are various objects that are used traditionally: the breathing, various body-based meditations, certain colors, light, the Brahma Viharas. These are all valid objects to use as meditation. One thing we didn't touch on too much yesterday, samadhi as a practice is focusing on an object. But usually when we talk about samadhi, we talk about the jhanas, but jhana is a resultant state of practicing samadhi. That means you can meditate on an object, but you are not necessarily in jhana, in this high absorption state. So the jhanas are a result of practicing concentration meditation. And some people have the ability to do this more easily than others. These samadhi states come up when the 5 hindrances are abandoned. Okay. So now we have the question of what is mindfulness? You should be able to explain in a short, simple, clear sentence what mindfulness practice is. So who would like to have a go? Can we have a volunteer? What is sati? What is mindfulness meditation? Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. Sati is this state of awareness. So it's really just bare awareness. Instead of just bare awareness. Yeah.
Bare awareness of what?
What's of the present moment, of what's happening right here, right now. Both in the body, in the mind, and actually in the environment as well.
In both the body and in the mind.
As far as in the environment. So you're just aware of what's happening here and then also around you. Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm driving my car along the road and I'm avoiding the other cars, am I practicing sati meditation?
No, not that. That's just bare awareness. So it's not meditation, because I think the question was, sorry, maybe I misunderstood, because the question was, what is sati? Just mindfulness. You're just mindful of the fact that you're driving. Yeah. So in itself, it's not a meditative state, I believe. It's just a state of your mind or being aware.
So sati is not necessarily a meditation.
Yeah.
Many activities can have sati, right?
That's my interpretation. Yes.
Okay, so somebody comes to you, you're in Singapore, for example, you go to a school and somebody says to you, what is mindfulness meditation? What is your answer?
Mindfulness meditation. So it's being aware of whatever that's happening right here, right now in your body and mind. That would be, yeah.
But isn't everybody aware of what's happening in body and mind?
And also with the objective of, probably with the objective of responding to whatever that's coming in a more skillful way. Yeah. Like going in circles.
With the objective of responding
skillfully to whatever that's
skillfully.
in front of
What
me.
do you mean by skillfully?
It's like if someone is asking me what is skillfully, means just seeing what it is as it is, without judgment, without sort of putting in my own interpretation and things like that, and seeing what this person or this question now actually wants.
Okay. We have raised a lot of questions with this. If you have the sentence with responding skillfully, you cannot have the sentence observing without judgment. Because in order to respond skillfully, there must be some kind of judgment. So I know this is a tricky stuff. If we can go on, somebody else, please. Please answer the question.
Okay.
If somebody asks you, what is mindfulness meditation? What is your thought?
Okay, let me try. I guess I hope in here we talk about the right sati, right? Samasati, or
Okay.
just general sati. And yeah, usually we talk about the satis refers to samasati. The mindfulness is the practice of mindful on body, feeling, and mind object.
Okay. But what do you mean by mindful in that sentence? What does mindful mean? And please remember that English
Be
words
mindful
may
on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I try to say be mindful on, like, for aspects of mind and body. Yeah.
Four aspects. What are they?
Yeah, just before body, feeling, and mind objects.
Okay, so we're going to come to Satipatthana 3. Now, remember, if you say mind objects, nobody's going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like thoughts or ideas.
Like thoughts or ideas. Is that part of mindfulness of Dhamma?
In Mahasatipatthana Sutta, and the Dhamma, it's kind of wide, and also Satipatthana Sutta, and the Dhamma, the category of Dhamma, kind of same as the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, but in the other suttas, like some Samyutta Nikaya, and very short, those suttas, it doesn't mention in details, and some researchers say the last part, it's just like thoughts and ideas. Yeah, that's what I know.
Certainly we are. Just give me a second. I just want to pull up the actual sutta. So I'm just searching for it online. I want to get Bhante Sujato's version. I'm going to share the sutta. Okay. So in the mindfulness sutta, some interesting features in this sutta. As you know, we have mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of citta, and mindfulness of Dhamma. I want to emphasize that when we use the English translations for these words, the English translations might not be very good translations. So one problem that happens, especially with Asian monks who know these terms, Citta, Dhamma, Vedana, Gaya, you know these terms, but the translation might not be a very good translation. So while you know the concept that you are thinking about, the person that's listening might not really know what you're talking about. So for example, if you say to me, mindfulness of mind objects, I know you mean mindfulness of Dhamma. But the person who's listening in ordinary English won't understand that word Dhamma, mindfulness of Dhamma. Or Citta, I know what you mean if you say mindfulness of mind states. You mean Citta, but the person listening might not understand. So we need to find clear ways to talk about these things. The same for the word mindful. In English, mindful really just means to be careful. So if you are walking along the street and there are some holes in the street, or there is some things hanging low across the street, you know, the stalls, they sometimes have the window open. You have to be mindful, which means you are careful where you are walking, not to fall into something or bang your head. So mindful in English really just means to be careful. And that doesn't quite get the idea of mindfulness practice that we are doing. So just note that the English words might not be very good translation. In the sutta, then we'll come back to you, Venerable, in a minute. I want to carry on with what you were talking about, but I think it's a good moment or opportunity for us just to go back to the sutta. In the sutta, the first part of mindfulness practice is Gaya Nupassana, or Pasana. Pasana means to see. So Gaya is the body, so seeing the body. And so how do you see the body? Number one, you can use mindfulness of breathing. Number two, you can use the postures, sitting, standing, walking, or lying down, and bring awareness to the postures. Thirdly, you can use situational awareness. I would translate as refined movements, because the Thai says Iriya Bot Yoi, or refined movements. And again, the standard phrase that you see repeated throughout many, many suttas for this is the standard phrase that is used. When a mendicant, which just means monk, this word mendicant means monk, acts with awareness when going out and coming back, looking ahead, looking aside, bending or extending the limbs, putting on the robe, the carrying the bowl, eating, drinking, chewing, tasting, urinating, defecating, walking, standing, sitting, sleeping, waking, speaking, or keeping silent. He acts with situational awareness. This word situational awareness is where we get the word sampajanya, which I've highlighted on the screen. So this is a particular form of sati. If sati means mindfulness, sati sampajanya is often translated as mindful awareness. So sampajanya is a particular form of sati, because you can have other forms of sati. For example, marana sati means to recollect your own death, or that you are going to die. So there are several different kinds of sati that we find throughout the scriptures. The word sati actually means to call into mind. So you call something deliberately into mind, that is sati, in the general meaning of the term. But in meditation here, we're using sati chambajanya, so calling into mind with clear awareness. Fourth kind of body awareness is focusing on the repulsive, asupa gamatana. So you see the body as being unpleasant in different ways in order to break your attachment to the body. Fifth way of the body awareness is to focus on the elements. That is fire element, earth element, water element, and earth, water, fire, and air elements. So that's another way to use mindfulness of body. Then the charnel ground contemplations. The word charnel just means burial ground or the graveyard. So various ways in which you can visualize your own body, usually in ways that will break attachment to it. So you see the body as a skeleton, or as rotting flesh, or as newly dead, or as long dead. Different ways you imagine or perceive your body in an unpleasant way. You view the body as unpleasant in order to break attachment to the body. The second, I want to bring attention at the end of each of the 4 foundations of mindfulness is a very important section that very rarely gets mentioned when people are teaching Satipatthana or mindfulness. So in this final section, final section of each of the sections, you have the same phrase. So he meditates, observing the body internally, externally, both internally and externally. They observe the nature of the body as arising and ceasing, and both arising and ceasing. Again, typical way of saying things in Buddhism. You say A and B, and both A and B. So we see the body as arising. Here he uses the word originate, but it means arising. Samudaya, if you see this word here, samudaya, arising. Ceasing and arising and ceasing. So the body does not arise and cease. You cannot observe the body arising and ceasing because your body aroused 20, 30, 50 years ago and will cease in 10, 20, 30 years' time. So the fact that the body is impermanent over a span of time is not relevant here. You see the body or body awareness arising and ceasing in consciousness. That it's doing in this moment. So again, we are only concerned with the thing that's arising in this actual moment. We don't care that the body arises and ceases over the span of 50 years or 100 years. In my case, 54 years. 55 years I've been alive. What we are concerned with is aspects of the body coming into consciousness and leaving consciousness in this moment. So, final line, which I think is the most important in the Satipatthana Sutta. All else, mindfulness is established just to the extent that there is body or body exists. Just to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness. This word knowledge here, jnana, and pati sati mataya, or continuous mindfulness. Just to the extent for knowledge and continual awareness. And they meditate independent, not grasping to anything in the world. This line, I think, is really important. And I rarely hear mindfulness teachers talking about it. But in my opinion, it's the most important line in the sutta, and it occurs 4 times for each of the foundations. That there comes a point where you simply know that there is body and you abide without grasping at anything in the world. That is what we are aiming towards, that moment of equipoise, where the mind stops still and does not grasp onto anything. That's what we should be aiming towards. And one thing that happens, sometimes yogis have this experience come up. Suddenly, the mind becomes bright, intensified experience. The hindrances are gone. You have energy. You have a piti, or the pleasant sensation arises through the body, and you are not grasping at anything in the world. This is what we are aiming for. So please, when you are looking at the Satipatthana Sutta, I want to draw your attention to this last couple of lines on each section. So he comes on to the feelings. Now, feelings, again, is not a very good translation of Vedana. Because feelings in English means feeling happy or feeling sad or feeling dull or feeling like you need the bathroom or feeling like you want to go on holiday or buy a new car. Feelings in the English word mean emotions. So it's really not a very good translation. A more accurate translation is pleasant or unpleasant sensation. And you can have pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensation. In my translation, I use the word liking and disliking, because these are really clear words. When you're liking something, you're drawn towards it. When you dislike something, you're pushing away from it. The pushing and pulling in the mind, observation of this pushing and pulling is what we want to do in the second foundation. I want to draw your attention, most importantly, to the last section of this, just like the section on the body. He observes liking and disliking, originating and disappearing. Or else, mindfulness is established just to the extent necessary for knowledge and continual mindfulness. And they meditate, independent, not grasping at anything in the world. So there comes to a point where the liking and disliking will stop or just be very, very faint. And the yogi, you will have this experience just dwelling independent, not grasping at anything in the world. This is the goal of the mindfulness of feelings. This is how a mendicant or a monk meditates, observing an aspect of feelings. It should be clear when the Buddha uses the word monk, this does not mean just only a monk can do it. This means anybody who practices. So that is feelings, observing the mind. Mind, not a very good translation, the citta. So when we are talking about citta or mind, I would call this mind states, would be a better translation. He knows if the mind has greed or does not have greed. He knows when the mind has hate, or he knows when the mind does not have hate. He knows the mind with delusion, and he knows the mind without delusion. He knows the mind that is constricted, and he knows the mind that is not constricted, scattered. He knows the mind that is expanded, and he knows the mind that is not expanded. He knows the mind that is supreme. I'm not sure I like the word supreme in this case. But anyway, that's his translation. The mind that is surpassed or, supreme. The mind that is not supreme. He knows when the mind is immersed in concentration. He knows when the mind is not immersed in concentration. He knows the mind that is freed or liberated. This word vimutti, important word in Buddhism. Sometimes you can experience the vimutti, liberation state. You need to know it and recognize it. He knows a mind that is not freed, not liberated. So that is how he observes mind states internally and externally. He sees mind states as they arise and as they cease. Okay, again, mindfulness, watching things arise and cease. But for the third time, the Buddha puts the same passage at the end of the section. Or else mindfulness is established to the extent that mind exists, just to the extent necessary for knowledge and mindfulness. They meditate independent, not grasping at anything in the world. Continuous mindfulness, this word, pati sati mataya. Pati means to progress or to practice or continuously. And jnana, to know. So this word jnana for knowledge and pati sati or continual mindfulness. So again, at the end of this section, the Buddha makes quite clear when that state of mind arises, when the mind enters into equipoise, into stillness, that is as much mindfulness as you need. And you meditate not grasping at anything in the world. The fourth aspect of mindfulness, fourth foundation of mindfulness, here he translates as observing principles. But this is mindfulness of Dhamma. Mindfulness of Dhamma. So mind states is citta, but Dhamma principles is the fourth foundation of mindfulness. This is not being mindful of thoughts and feelings. This is keeping in mind the teachings. This is important because mindfulness is not simple, non-judgmental awareness. Mindfulness necessarily has judgment built into it that, as our friend Mitu from Singapore was saying earlier, you know what is skillful and unskillful. The word that she was using, skillful, is a translation of kusala and akusala. So this is built into mindfulness meditation, is not non-judgmental. You are judging because you know what is skillful and what is not skillful. So the fourth foundation of mindfulness is bearing in mind Dhamma, teachings. Not just observing what's happening, but observing while bearing in mind the teachings. First teaching that's mentioned was the 5 hindrances, which we've just talked about earlier today. Or the 5 khandhas, reflection using the 5 khandhas. We will talk about that later on today or next week. Or the 6 senses. This is the way that I practice personally meditation. I keep in mind the 6 senses. This is my basis of my mindfulness practice. Or the awakening factors, which we just mentioned in the previous sutta. Again, this word bojjhanga, the 7 awakening factors. The 4 noble truths we can bear in mind. Or suffering, the origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So this is the mindfulness of Dhamma. We keep in mind these teachings while we are practicing observation. This sutta, of course, you know, the Satipatthana Sutta. I will put into the link this particular version. I like Bhante Sujato, this monk here. You see his name, Sujato, because you can click on the Pali terms and the English terms, so you can see what the original terms are that he's using. I'm going to put into the chat the link to this sutta. This is all clear. Anybody have any question or comment about the original sutta here?
Ajahn, can I have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about the body, the modern day where we also learn like body scan. I always try to reconcile what exactly this body scan of, going through different parts of your body and what is in the practice under the sort of understanding your body parts. So I'm not sure. So where exactly does it help? Is this also a practice that is useful for us in modern days? This body scan that is advocated by the mindfulness based therapies.
Do you mean the viewing the body as hair, tail, hair, blood, skin, pus, sinew, bone,
Correct. Yes.
phlegm, pus, bile,
Yeah,
fluid?
correct. Yes. Yeah.
So
So I think in the modern sort of perception, it feels very sort of gross, almost grotesque. So a lot of it seems to have been adapted to say just scanning through your body of your head, your eyes, your hands, and so on. Yeah.
Right. So personally, I think in the Satipatthana Sutta, it was an accumulation of different ways that the Buddha mentioned being aware of body. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for mindfulness practice. So what I mean by this is when they compiled the sutta, they compiled everything that the Buddha said about being mindful of body. But in terms of a meditation practice, when you're sitting meditating, it might not be useful. In large part because you have to imagine the hair, the nails, the teeth, the skin, the blood, the sinew, the pus, the liver, the bile, the spleen, the bones. And this is using imagination to conjure up images, and that's not really mindfulness practice. This practice itself, when you find it used in the suttas, was called asupa gamatana, or patika was another word, seeing the disgusting nature of things. And what this means is, with every possible thing that you can perceive it in the attractive form or the unattractive form. Let me give an example. Pizza. You can look at pizza and think, I really, really want to eat that pizza. You can also look at pizza, say if you're feeling ill, you look at pizza and suddenly it's not attractive. Or you can think, I want to eat the pizza, but then you think about all the cheese and the cholesterol in the cheese, and the bread is not good flour, and then you can turn yourself off. So suddenly you see the pizza as not attractive. So in the mindfulness of feelings, the Buddha is teaching us or telling us to be able to switch between views. When you're caught in desire, you should be able to see that thing in the unattractive aspect. If you're caught in disliking or hatred, you should be able to see in the attractive aspect. So, for example, if you are hating somebody, I have friends on Facebook right now, they are really hating Donald Trump. You should be able to unbind yourself from that hating mind. So you can see, well, Donald Trump is a human being. He has suffering and thoughts and feelings. like we do, and so you can arouse the heart of compassion. So the point of the seeing the body in the unattractive aspect is so that we can break attachment to it. If you have broken the attachment to the body in this moment, not for the rest of your life or for the rest of the week, but in this moment, then you can dwell, not grasping at anything in the world. Remember the last part of the statement? If, however, you're attached to the body, like I want to be beautiful, I want to be attractive, or I want to be strong, or I want to be tough, or I want to have pleasant sensation, I want to eat some nice food, I want to change the air conditioner, I want to A, B, C, D, then it can be useful to view the body in the unattractive aspect in order to break attachment to it. If you're not in strong attachment to body at that moment, then you don't need the asupa kamatan. Asupa means to go against. So asupa kamatana means to go against something, means you have a state of mind or state of liking and disliking that has arisen and has caught hold of your attention. So you need to find some way to unbind yourself from that. So that's what the mindfulness of body is talking about, seeing the body in the unpleasant aspect. Clear enough?
Yes, thank you, Ajahn. So it's really this ability to have a balanced mind, to see what is, and knowing not to be attached to the pleasant or unpleasant, but also at the same time being fully aware and having a balanced view at any one point in time. It feels like that to me. So it's another tool that we can use when we're aware of our state and what we really need at that point in time. So it feels that like that. Yeah.
Right. So it's a good tool that you can use if the mind is getting caught up in something.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn.
When the monks and nuns, when they ordain, in the ordination procedure, the person, the preceptor or upajjhaya who is giving the ordination, in the ordination ceremony will give 5 objects of meditation to the monk or nun: hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin. And so when we ordain, we have to recite these: Gesa, Loma, Nakha, Datta, Danto, Dacho, Dacho, Danto. And when we have to recite it backwards as well. So the person who's ordaining has to recite these 5 objects of meditation forwards and backwards. In the ordination procedure, it's the only mention of meditation during the ordination. And what this means is hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin is everything you can observe of a human being. When you look at a person by sight, that's all you can see. You may argue I can see the eyes as well, but now hair of the head, you can see it as beautiful or non-beautiful. In a beautiful girl or a beautiful guy, you may say they have beautiful hair. But if you were to take that hair and put it in your soup or put it in the drain of your plug hole, that same hair would appear as unpleasant. So same for teeth or the mouth. You can look at somebody and think they are very beautiful, they have a beautiful mouth. But you can also think of teeth, they need constant cleaning, they smell bad, they have bacteria in them. So all of these things, hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin, are things that it's easy to see either as beautiful and attractive or as unattractive. So the upajjhaya, the preceptor, is giving the new monk or new nun these 5 objects to break attachment to the physical body. So we can manipulate our perception flipping between beautiful or not beautiful. Again, as the sutta says, though, in each time, or else he simply has awareness to the extent necessary for knowledge and continual awareness, and he dwells without clinging to anything in the world. That's what we are trying to get to. So yeah, 5 subjects for frequent reflection: the hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin is everything you can see of a human being. It will break your attachment to lust specifically, or being attached to beauty, either your own or in another person.
Thank you.
It's nearly 10:30. So if we can come back to Venerable, he said, Venerable Zhu Quinn, he mentions when we're talking about sati to be mindful of body, feeling, mind, and mind objects. I would like to change this word, change his translations a little bit, or let you be aware of the translations a bit. 1, body. Okay, I'm happy with that. 2, I always use the word liking, disliking. Liking. That's my translation. You can use probably the more accurate translation is liking and dislike, pleasant or unpleasant sensation. We will talk more about feelings later on today. 3, mind is okay, but I would use the word mind state. We're not really observing the mind, we are observing the state of mind. Citta anaramana, citta without an object, is observing the mind. But if the mind is condensed, in restricted, or in concentration and not concentration, in greed, hatred, and delusion, we know the mind state. And then the 4th one I would translate as Dhamma principles, because the 4th foundation of mindfulness is not being aware of mind objects. It is being aware of Dhamma. That is, we are discriminating between what is correct and incorrect, or useful, not useful, skillful, not skillful. I want to come up to this word that you used earlier, if I can. I have to just adjust my Zoom a little bit. This word skillful and that you used, this is the translation of the word kusala and akusala, which is translated as skillful and unskillful, or sometimes translated as wholesome and unwholesome. A note on the word, which is a really good word to use, this word skillful, but we should know what the original meant. Kusala, akusala. Kusala and akusala is not good and bad. That is punya and papa. Punya is translated as merit, and papa is translated as evil. So good and bad, or right and wrong, are these words, punya and papa. These we do use in Buddhism, but when we're talking about meditation, we're usually talking about kusala, akusala, what is skillful or wholesome for us and what is unwholesome. So, for example, watching TV is not papa, it's not evil, but it is akusala, it's not skillful. So while we are watching TV, we are not practicing what is skillful. Doesn't mean you can't watch TV. I watch TV every now and then. I watch YouTube a little bit too much. So kusala, akusala is not good and bad. It's not right and wrong, good or evil. It is what is useful for your own practice, i.e. to arouse wakefulness, knowingness, clarity of mind, concentration, mindfulness. That's kusala. So I did like what you said earlier about responding to our objects skillfully. A big part of mindfulness practice means that we are responding skillfully. It is not viewing without judgment. I want to make this clear because over and over again, I see mindfulness taught as you just observe without judgment. But no, we should be bearing in mind Dharma. Mindfulness is judgmental. It discriminates between what is skillful or not skillful. The reason we say without judgment means that anything that comes into mind, let's say an unwholesome thought or unwholesome feeling comes into mind, a feeling of lust or anger or hatred comes into mind, we don't try to force it out of mind. We don't try to squash it. We want to be able to observe that sensation, allow it to be there, observe it, to know its nature. That's what we mean by non-judgmental. However, we are judgmental in the fact we will not follow it. When something comes into mind, non-judgmental means that you know it. But the judgmental aspect means you do not follow it. Otherwise, you are not practicing mindfulness. So I'm walking by the bank and I think to myself, I really want to rob the bank and get myself a load of money, right? This is an unskillful thought that is coming to my mind. I don't want to pretend that it isn't there. I should know what is in my mind in the present moment. So I hold that feeling, that thought, I want to rob the money from the bank without judgment. I allow it to be there and I watch it, but I do not allow myself to follow it. So mindfulness has that dual quality of holding something, but judging it and not following it.
Thank you, Ajahn. It's a lot clearer now. Thank you very, very much. Yes.
We only talked a lot this morning. I'm going to see if I can just quickly find this other sutta for you. Give me a moment to search for it. Okay, so the Nagara Sutta, if I can find this. Sutta. I want to get Venerable Sujata's version. Yeah, got the wrong sutta there. Okay, I found the sutta for us. Give me a few seconds. Yeah, I can't find the sutta I'm looking for, but this sutta also has I will find it during the lunchtime. in this particular, several times the Buddha would mention mindfulness as being like a gatekeeper. So suppose there was a king's citadel or fort with fortified embankments, ramparts, arches, and gates. On these gates of the city is a gatekeeper who is astute, competent, and clever, or smart and clever. He keeps the strangers out and he lets the good people into the city. So many times the Buddha used this analogy as mindfulness as being like a gatekeeper who, the gatekeeper lets good people in the city, keeps the bad people out of the city. In the same way, mindfulness has the quality of allowing good qualities to be acted on and not allowing the bad qualities to be acted on. So he says a swift pair of messengers would arise from the east and say to the gatekeeper, I wish to see the Lord of the city. The gatekeeper would let the good messengers in and let them depart. So the Buddha explains, city in this analogy is a term for the body made up of the four principal states produced by mother and father, built from rice and porridge. I love that statement. It's so amusing. My body is built out of rice and porridge, liable to impermanence, wearing away, erosion, breaking up. So when he talks about the gatekeeper on the city, city, he says, is a term for this body. The gates, he says, is a term of the six senses. And gatekeeper, he says, is a term for mindfulness. So this sense of mindfulness as a gatekeeper is really important. Mindfulness is not just non-discriminatory awareness. Mindfulness necessarily involves a judgment. So if we can put this into here where she said, with objective, responding skillfully, this is the quality of a gatekeeper. Very important word in Buddhism. Okay, I have to go down for lunch in a few minutes, so we're going to wrap up for the morning. Anything else? What else do we need to explain sati? I feel we haven't got very far today. Go ahead, Emma. We can't hear you. Okay.
Yeah. If I imagine that I will say to a boy of 14 years old, what is sati first?
Yeah.
I will think that sati, it's a quality in our mind to remember to be here and now.
Okay.
And if we want to develop or train our mind, this quality needs to be developed.
This quality of
remember to be here and now.
Okay.
To be alert.
I like that word, alert. Yes.
And if I have to explain what is mindful meditation,
Yes.
I will say that in order to train the mind to be alert and to be here and now, we can put this attention in 4 aspects. The 4 that we already explained before, Pali, liking and disliking, mind state, and Dhamma principle, or keeping in mind the teachings.
Okay. So you used in, okay. How is the mind not in the here and now? I would ask, isn't everybody in the here and now? What does it mean to not be in the here and now?
If we are talking about qualities of mind, we can be here and now, but not knowing that we are here and now.
Okay, so alert here and the now, you use the word knowing, which, remember, in the sutta, the Buddha used this word knowing, right, at the end, or else he is mindful just to the extent necessary to be knowing and mindful continuously without clinging to anything in the world. So he used this word knowing. But what does it mean to not be in the now?
It doesn't mean that you are not in the now, but that it means that you don't know that you are in the now. That's the difference.
You don't know that you're in the here and now. So what does that feel like? How can you describe that?
Limbo.
Limbo. I use the word limbo in another way, so I'm going to avoid that word. Okay, can anybody help her out? What does it mean to not be in the here and now? I think you are correct, but you still haven't found a way to nail down the description. Okay. What does it mean to not be mindful? What does that look like? What does that feel like? I'm asking this for everybody also. Anybody with an idea? A lot of people who I didn't hear from yet, I really want to hear from. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Wu Jun, go ahead.
Yes, it means your heart, whether it will be in the past or in the future, it is not in the present.
How can you be in the future?
Like when I'm talking with you, I'm thinking what I'm going to eat in the lunch.
Okay. But isn't that you now talking about what I'm going to eat for lunch?
But talking is present, but my heart is not in present.
Your heart?
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it in English. Your mind, my mind.
Okay.
It's not equal with my mouth, which means my mind is not equal, not coherence with my action.
Okay. So not to be in the past or the future, how can I be in the past?
Like, I still remember what you said 1 hour ago, and remember what you had said about turtle in Kamsong, and that kind of memory or remember.
But you will always have that memory. So having that memory does not mean you are in the past.
Yeah, but my mind is into the memory.
Okay. So your mind, or let's say attention.
Yes, attention.
Attention is placed on the past or the future.
Yes, place on. Wonderful. Attach on.
Yeah, attached also. Or we can say placed on the past or future with attachment. Okay. But past or future what?
The mind and the feeling and the my object.
But what is the thing that you are experiencing at that moment?
Yeah. Experience the past feeling.
Okay. So experiencing the past feeling means you are in thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Because you cannot experience a past feeling. That's impossible.
Yes.
But you can think it. You can think up that past experience, or you can remember it, or you can talk about turtles in your mind. You can remember that experience.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's attention is placed on thoughts of the past or the future.
Yes. And remember, feeling.
Yeah.
Feels all kinds of past phenomena.
So we've got a number of these things. The best word for sati, by the way, is this word to recollect.
Oh.
This is my opinion. This is the best translation of the word sati, to recollect. But we can also use the word remember. Sati does mean to call something into mind, or to keep in mind. These are all nice translations, these three words, nice translations of the word sati.
And yesterday you mentioned restraint. How
Yeah.
about that?
Restraint, yes, but restraint means, as we mentioned earlier, to respond to the mind skillfully. That means you're restraining the mind from going into unskillful actions. But if we are practicing the six senses, for example, you restrain the mind from going to anything at all, skillful or unskillful. So I like this, what you said. We got to a good sentence here. Attention is placed on thoughts of past or future. That's what is meant by not being in the past or the future. I say placed on. Placed is this word in the Pali, manasikara. And manasikara means to pay attention or to attend to. So when we say we're in the past or the future, it means we are attending to something, a thought of the past or the future. Like, I know what I'm going to have for lunch today, in about half an hour. I am attending to the thought about lunch. That's how we are not in the here and now. I would say not to be in the past or the future. One of the best words that we can use is lost in. You become lost in thoughts of the past or the future. And sati or mindfulness is specifically not getting lost. You may have thoughts of the past or the future, but you're viewing them as present moment. You're not getting lost in those thoughts of the past or the future. That is the distinction. So if right now I start thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch, that is the present moment thinking. If my mind goes into that thought, I get lost in it. Now I'm in the past or the future. That's what it means. So mindfulness is not to get lost in thoughts of the past or the future. Okay. After lunch, I'm going to ask you all to write down a few sentences for a short, clear explanation to somebody who is new to Dharma. What is mindfulness meditation? In fact, we might ask two questions. What is mindfulness? And what is mindfulness meditation? That's the question I will ask you after lunch. Okay, talking of lunch, I'm going for my lunch now, so I will see you all after lunch.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Thank you, Ajahn.